Hey there, fellow horse lovers. Welcome back to the Daily Ride podcast. I am Morgan, your host, and today we're diving into another little life lesson that I've learned from my horse, Trueheart. Horses are incredible healers because they naturally teach us lessons that can have a really profound impact and the ability to transform any area of your life if you choose to incorporate them. The Daily Ride podcast directly supports Trueheart Healing, a nonprofit that I founded to support veterans, first responders, children with disabilities and/or life-altering illness, and their families to support and empower the formation of stabilizing relationships, discover hope, and find purpose through the joy of equine companionship and nurturing a healing environment with horses. Head on over to www.the-daily-ride.com to make a donation to Trueheart Healing to help us further our mission. So today, we're talking about mindset, and specifically the concept of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Now, if you've been around the world of personal development or in corporate America, you've probably heard the term growth mindset before, and generally you might be aware of the fact that people typically use this in the sense that if you have a growth mindset, you're constantly looking for opportunities. But let's go back to the basics. So, the dichotomy of fixed mindset versus growth mindset was established with Carol Dweck when she published her book Mindset in 2006. She is a Stanford psychologist, and she really helped popularize the idea of mindset and its impact on the rest of our lives. In fact, her research has really paved the way towards better understanding and incorporation of the power of having a growth mindset in your life because of the positive impacts that they have observed throughout multiple scientific studies. And I'm excited to get into some of those with you. But first, let's talk about what fixed and growth mindsets really mean as she defined them in her initial studies. A fixed mindset is essentially someone who holds the belief that their abilities, intelligence, any other talents or aptitudes that they might have or not have are static. You're either born with them or you're born without them. And there's no amount of effort or practice that can help develop those abilities. People with a fixed mindset might say things like, I am never going to be able to jump that high on my horse, or I don't naturally have good balance, so I'm never going to be a really great rider. Or they might say things like this about their horse or others, where he's not naturally good at that, so that's not the sport for us. Or my horse isn't really fast, so we're never going to run barrels. When you have a fixed mindset, challenges or perceived challenges tend to become insurmountable roadblocks. If something doesn't work, it's really easy to give up with a fixed mindset because you have this belief that no amount of effort and trying and practice is really going to change the outcome much. People with fixed mindsets tend to avoid taking on activities that they don't believe aligns with their naturally born talents. But possibly more interesting, people with fixed mindsets tend to avoid challenges even in things that they are good at or that they believe that they are good at. And that's because of how the belief of static abilities and intelligence ties into our sense of identity and self-worth. So, for example, someone with a fixed mindset who believes that they're naturally really good at math is less likely to sign up for a challenging math class because, say, that person takes this math class, struggles with it the entire semester, and at the end doesn't get a passing grade. That person that holds the belief that, oh, I'm good at math, suddenly you have a data point that you're not. If you were good at math, this challenging math class would naturally be easy, right? You wouldn't struggle throughout the semester. At the end of the math class, you'd get a passing grade because you're naturally good at math. And so if that isn't the case, then suddenly this deeply held belief about yourself that you're good at math can't be true. And so that failure in that math class is no longer just about math, but it's something deeper. It's tied to your sense of self-worth. I must not be good at math. And so individuals with fixed mindsets tend to not challenge themselves and not seek out opportunities for growth, not just with the things that they don't believe that they are naturally gifted with, but especially with things that they think that they are naturally gifted with. And as a result, people with a fixed mindset, from avoiding all of these opportunities and challenges, generally become self-fulfilling prophecies. They never expand their skills because every opportunity to expand the skill comes with the risk of failure. And that risk of failure comes with the risk of challenging their sense of identity, which in turn can shatter their self-esteem. So individuals with fixed mindsets tend to avoid opportunities to challenge themselves because of that high personal risk that's tied to that possibility of failure that inherently comes with challenges. So on the flip side, a growth mindset is someone who holds the belief that while you might be born with certain talents and predispositions to certain things, by and large, skills and abilities can be developed through hard work, dedication, and learning. People with a growth mindset tend to look at challenges as opportunities to grow and learn rather than a make or break test of their identity. There's not a whole lot of risk with taking on new challenges because failure represents an opportunity rather than a challenge. People with growth mindsets are more likely to say, this might be really hard for me now, but with patience and training and some hard work, I think I can get it figured out. Or about their horse, this might be a tough skill for my horse now, but if we keep practicing it, eventually, I bet they'll figure it out. And through that, that's really helpful to see my horse struggle with this because that tells me exactly what I need to do to support them to make sure that we do get this figured out. So people with growth mindsets tend to, unlike fixed mindsets, actively seek out challenges in their life, especially challenges that they feel like they will likely fail because they see failure as valuable data because through failure, they have important clues as to what they need to work on and develop next. Because of this, they tend to be more naturally curious, and these people tend to be more of the lifelong learning type. Additionally, people with growth mindsets tend to have a higher self-esteem and be more resilient in the face of challenges throughout their lives because of how they view setbacks and the failures that come with challenging yourself. My horse, True, has been excellent in demonstrating to me the difference between seeing things as, I can't do this, versus, I don't know how to do this yet. And that additional word at the end of that sentence, yet, has been such a small shift in my thought process, but it's really made a world of difference in my relationship with True and my horsemanship and honestly the rest of my life. So this sounds really inspirational and all, but don't just take it from me and my experience with True Heart. Let's take a look at the science behind this. So since Carol Dweck's 2006 book on mindset, she's gone on to spearhead further research in this field. In 2007, she participated in a large-scale longitudinal, so over a long period of time, study with students in middle school and looking at their academic performance and how that's related to mindset. They found that students who were taught in school that their intelligence is not a fixed thing but can be malleable and developed and improved showed higher motivation in their classes and improved math grades compared to students who still held a fixed mindset. And this was really pivotal in this field of psychologic research because it was one of the first large-scale studies that demonstrate how shifting your mindset can positively affect academic outcomes. And most interesting from this study, they actually taught students as part of their middle school education how to cultivate a growth mindset. And that they saw that the students that were exposed to this teaching, this idea that you can shift your mindset and therefore shift your outcome, actually did adopt a growth mindset and demonstrate growth in that area as well. And they benefited from positive academic outcomes. This mindset thing applies to much more in life outside of just academic intelligence. A 2017 study highlighted how athletes that have a growth mindset are more likely to embrace challenges and persist in the face of setbacks, causing them to overall perform better than other athletes with fixed mindsets. This study also controlled for cultural differences across the athletes in the study, and they found that the universal overarching theme was the adaptation of a growth mindset, and that transcended any cultural difference. So when you take any kind of social psychology study, you have to account for cultural differences because, as we know, the culture in the United States is very individualistic versus other cultures tend to be more traditionally communal. And so our personally held belief and value system can be largely influenced from the culture that we come from. This study was really interesting in that it controlled for cultural influence like that, and still, growth mindset transcended any cultural predisposition and developing skills. I also find this really interesting because it isn't just increased performance, it's the resilience piece. Any athlete, or really anyone who has been dedicating their life to an art of some kind, of a discipline of some kind, will know that improvement and success is never linear. There's usually at least one or two really bad potholes in the road getting to mastery of whatever you're working towards. And so the idea that a growth mindset can help you persist in the face of setbacks can be really powerful in and of itself. So no wonder this helps promote better performance, because those potholes, those detours, those unplanned setbacks aren't as devastating as they would be if you had a fixed mindset about them. Another study was done in 2019 regarding problem solving and brain behavior. As I mentioned in a previous episode, my first career was in psychology and cognitive neuroscience. And I really appreciated the cognitive neuroscience because it married the social science of psychology to concrete hard evidence science. And this study in 2019 utilized an EEG to monitor participants' brain activity during the study. And they had people attempt problems, because they were curious to see how someone's belief about themselves, their fixed or growth mindset, would actually impact their brain's ability to solve complex problems. And they found that people that had a growth mindset exhibited stronger error-related neural activity. So that means they were more aware of mistakes that they made, and they were better at learning from them. So their brain was much more adaptive to mistakes that they made in their problem solving, which meant that they had an easier time correcting these mistakes and learning from them so they didn't repeat them than did participants that held a fixed mindset about themselves. So this suggests that the belief about how your brain works actually influences how your brain works. The year after that, there was a study in 2020, and this was actually a meta review. So they looked at over 400 studies relating how growth and fixed mindsets can influence your mental health outcome. And a huge overarching theme that they found across these 400 plus studies that they reviewed was that people that had a growth mindset were less likely to experience anxiety and depression, and overall were better at managing their stress. So we have seen how growth and fixed mindset can have an academic outcome, can have athletic outcomes, can have problem-solving outcomes, and now it's also tied to an easier time managing your mental health. You're less likely to experience anxiety and depression, you're better at managing stress, you're more resilient in the face of challenges, and you are better at regulating your own emotions. Mindset also impacts your performance in the workplace. One study, again, contributed by Carol Dweck, investigated whether or not fostering growth mindsets in the workplace could lead to better performance at work. And yes, they did. So this paper reviewed an intervention educating employees on how to foster growth mindsets both within themselves and their teams. And that led to higher performance across teams, better collaboration between teams at work, and employees were happier with their jobs. They reported higher job satisfaction. So, as part of this paper, to make it a little bit more actionable, the authors also explored how companies could design and support a working culture, an office culture that would encourage continuing learning and resilience, otherwise known as growth mindset. So, speaking of working relationships, what does all this have to do with your horse? When I started this episode, I said True really taught me this idea, and now I'm going back and I'm finding the scientific evidence of it. How can we use growth mindset to be more collaborative and have a more satisfying working relationship between you and your horse? So if you're stuck in a fixed mindset, you might be thinking, my horse really can't figure out how to do this. My horse just isn't smart enough to figure out this skill. This is going to take us forever to be able to learn. Or my horse cannot stand still. I'm never going to be able to tie them up and leave them alone for more than 2 minutes. Or my horse is really reactive and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to take them on a trail. Maybe I should consider selling them and finding a trail horse. Or my horse has a hard mouth, always going to have to use a bit that has a shank on it because they are just so heavy in their mouth. I see this a lot in sale ads where someone will say, well, they have a few quirks to work through before they're going to be a good horse. And I don't have time for taking them on as a project right now. So I'm selling them so I can afford to buy a horse that I don't have to argue with first. And I certainly understand that, but there are tones in posts like that that sound a little bit like a fixed mindset. Because if you approach things with a growth mindset with your horse, you recognize that dealing with quirks, dealing with challenges, that's the gift. That learning how to work through it with your horse, that process is the best part, not the mastery of the skill. The process in which not only do you both develop and improve the skill you're going for, but you have an opportunity to understand and connect with your horse and yourself and how you are showing up. Because if you cultivate a growth mindset about things, suddenly my horse can't stand still becomes an opportunity to figure out, okay, how do I teach my horse to stand still? And that question is much deeper and can be much more beneficial to answer than just mastering the skill of teaching your horse to stand still. Because at the end of the day, it's not about your horse getting the skill right. There's always going to be another skill that you're going to need to work on at some point. There's always going to be something new. There's always going to be the next level. It's not about doing the next thing, the next thing, the next skill. It's about both of you improving with each attempt and becoming more aware of what you both need from each other in order to learn it. And that is the true superpower. So, of course, I had to go back and find one last study that specifically connected growth mindset and its impact on interacting with horses. So, a study I found in 2021 looked at how human trainers' mindsets influence their relationship with their horses. And the study found that trainers that had more of a growth mindset were more persistent in overcoming challenges with their horses. And as a result, their horses exhibited more positive behavior changes compared to horses trained by individuals that had a fixed mindset, and they were lower in stress. So over a period of 6 months, horses demonstrated better learning outcomes, more skills learned, and lower stress levels when compared to horses that were trained by individuals that had a fixed mindset, because those individuals tended to adhere to more rigid methods of training even when progress was slow or something wasn't working for that horse's learning style. So horses in the growth mindset group tended to be more relaxed, more willing and curious to engage learning new exercises, and they showed increased problem-solving abilities, which is the exact effect that we've witnessed in human brains. True is really great at modeling a growth mindset because oftentimes when we learn a new trick, she doesn't get it at all at first. But I can tell she goes back once we're done with our training session. I'll put her back in her paddock And I can tell she'll have been thinking about it when I pull her out the next day, because suddenly she has 2 or 3 new ideas to try on for size when I ask for the new behavior we've been working on. Sometimes this isn't even involving trick training. When she was little, she refused to walk with me, mostly because she couldn't see a reason to. And we had practiced using a cow rope, just a roping rope, and looping it around her butt and kind of dragging her along from her butt. We called it the butt rope. And that worked for several months while she learned to walk with us. And she learned to develop good reasons to walk with us. And so we don't typically have the same problem where she plants and refuses to move, at least quite so badly anymore. But there came a point a couple months into using her butt rope where I could tell that she had been thinking of how to deal with this. And she decided to try bucking it off, because in her mind, having the butt rope and having to walk with me wasn't just something that she just resigned herself to having to do. She didn't have a fixed mindset about that. She didn't think like, oh, well, this is my life now. I'm always going to have a butt rope. Little does she know, yes, this is her life now. She's always going to have to walk with me. But she had a great growth mindset, thinking of ways that she might have a different outcome with the problem she's having, which is a growth mindset. So next time I put that butt rope on her, that was an opportunity for her to learn to do something else, like buck it off. So I had an opportunity to learn how to get her to walk with me without the butt rope, because she had figured out a way to not have to wear it and to get it off when I put it on her. And so then I had an opportunity to help her learn that she needed to walk with me with or without the butt rope. I laugh thinking about this and telling this story now because being halter broke, this horse learning how to walk politely next to you on the ground, is kind of a fundamental basic skill. But that was ground zero that we were starting with True. And that was her introverted left logical brain at its finest. If she doesn't feel like she's got a good reason to do something, she's not going to do it. In fact, she's going to go out of her way to think of ways that she can get out of doing it. And while that might be a temporary headache for me to try and train her through, what an amazing opportunity it was for both of us, because I got to see her model this growth mindset behavior, and I had an opportunity to practice fostering my own growth mindset with her. So, a real life example of having a growth mindset of my own relationship with True would probably be lunging. So, my deepest horse experience before True had been with Grace, and Grace was a pretty cowy little horse, and she really hated lunging. She would look at me like she had just gotten her PhD from college, and I handed her a coloring book and colored pencils whenever I would ask her to lunge. Judgy, I don't want to. This is beneath me. I am bored. And I couldn't blame her. And because of that, we just didn't lunge. And I went 15 plus years taking care of a horse, doing all of these other things with a horse, and never having much lunging practice. And so when I got True, one of the first things, being that she was a 2-year-old when we started her under saddle, was lunging as a means of connecting, making sure that she is paying attention to me and being ready and able to work, being able to observe her movements to make sure that she's sound and comfortable and focused before I step on, before I put my life in her hands by getting on her back. But I had never practiced lunging before. And so I didn't feel confident lunging her when I first got her either, because this was not a skill that I had developed at that point. On top of that, True has her opinion of lunging in common with Grace. She thinks it's the most boring thing ever, and she would love to skip on to the more interesting part. And so when she was little, she would also push the boundaries when I would ask her to lunge and respond by saying, no thanks. I don't think I really need to listen to you. So this felt a lot like a dead end. And I caught myself often having a thought that sounded something like, I'm never going to be as confident at lunging as my trainer Tara is. this is not something that I'm ever going to be super proficient at. Maybe True is going to be like Grace, and she's just not going to be a horse that will lunge. And those are all fixed mindset type of thoughts. Things shifted for me when, instead of just letting myself be stuck with lunging, I asked myself, what are other ways that I can accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish with lunging, which was connecting with my horse, a chance to see her move and make sure that she is focused and ready to work, and make sure that she is safe before I step on her back and allow her an opportunity to physically warm up her body. What else can I do with her that is not lunging that would accomplish those things? And for us, that was setting up obstacle courses for groundwork and walking through obstacle courses with her in the mornings and starting trick training with her to develop better connection and communication together. And those two things gave me a little bit more time to become comfortable being on the ground close to her and in her space and communicating with her how she needs to move, especially if I was doing it with her. True, I've mentioned before, is very introverted. And so she really needs to trust the person she's working with, and she needs to have a personal connection with them. And walking through obstacle courses with her side by side, I think helped us to develop more of a bond, more of a camaraderie and connection than we would have otherwise, because it wasn't just like I was standing there and telling her what she needed to do. I was actually doing it with her, which I believe helped her establish more trust in me, seeing that I'm not asking her to do anything that I wouldn't also be willing to do myself. Part of this also came from the fact that within 5 minutes of purchasing True, she kicked the snot out of me. And so I think for the first 6 to 8 months that I owned her, there was a lot of fear that I held in my body out of a sense of self-preservation. I mean, she's huge. That kick hurt. I was lucky that she got me right in my quad muscle, so nothing was broken. I was ultimately fine, but it wasn't lost on me that this was a horse that would defend herself if I ever pushed her hard enough. And so I think another piece to my hesitancy to do lunging with her came from not feeling like I could keep myself safe and not being able to get out of the way in time if she were to act up and kick if I did push her too far. And so instead of seeing lunging as a roadblock and, oh, we're just not never going to be good at this, we just have to live with this, learning to take a detour and do other groundwork and trick training before going back to lunging made all the difference. And so I don't think either of us really enjoys lunging still, but we're not bad at it anymore. So when I ask her to lunge, I have more confidence in recognizing and getting out of the way and protecting myself and really calling her bluff when she tries to sass me. And she can trust that I don't like making her do stuff that she doesn't like. So if she lunges without sass both ways, it's usually over pretty quick, as long as there's not any drama. And so seeing this lunging opportunity as truly as an opportunity to develop better communication and develop the skill of lunging, even if it meant we had to put it aside and take a detour into groundwork and trick training first, made all the difference. Because now I can say, even if something feels like a roadblock right now, it's not necessarily the case. You might need to take a winding path around the problem, but that problem doesn't have to be a problem forever. So the key here was persistence, patience, being creative, and the belief that we could both grow throughout tackling this challenge. Our lunging can definitely still improve too. I don't think that I'm a master lunger, and True certainly isn't either, but it's been really empowering and joyful to me to think about now. I used to get this actual knot in my stomach thinking about how I'm going to make her lunge because she can be quite obstinate, and I was a little freaked out from that kick for a while. So now I don't get that knot in my stomach, and I can almost get excited about seeing how our skills, specifically with lunging, could evolve in the future. Like, is it possible that someday we can get to the point where I can lunge her at liberty in a huge pasture? And of course, part of this is tying it to the idea of positive reinforcement. How can we make extending this skill into something that feels more like a game that's fun for both of us, that I can catch her doing it right? But because of this mindset shift into a growth mindset, this thing that used to be annoying for both of us now can be an opportunity and an exciting skill for us to go after in the future. So I guess the main takeaway from all of this science is that if you believe that you can improve, that in and of itself is the secret to improving. If you believe that you can't do something and what you're currently capable of is what you're stuck with for your life, then ultimately that will be true. So not only do these beliefs impact your own performance, but they become self-fulfilling prophecies about your horse too. So if you're thinking to yourself, man, I have a fixed mindset. I don't know that I'm good at this, and I'm not sure that I'm going to get better. Crap, this is a fixed mindset. Oh no, I just heard all this research about having a fixed mindset is detrimental to myself and my horse. What do I do? The good news is you can choose to develop a growth mindset. It's just a matter of being aware of your beliefs and some consistent practice with catching them and reframing them. So start noticing when you catch yourself having a fixed belief. I certainly still have them a lot. I think most people do. But can you catch those fixed belief thoughts as you think them and rephrase them to yourself in your head immediately? And again, this can be as simple as adding the word yet to the end of the thought. I'm not good at this to I'm not good at this yet. Also learn to embrace failure as feedback. So every time you or your horse makes a mistake, view it as a data point rather than a mistake. It's not a reflection of your worth or ability or your horse's worth or ability, but a mistake is instead a chance to learn. And if you'd like to take it a step further, I would encourage you to actually pursue constructive criticism, pursue getting feedback from people, actually solicit, hey, what do you think about this? And practice reframing that feedback or even rejection as valuable information to you. Because without having that feedback or that rejection or that, no, that's not right, you wouldn't have that data point. And you might need that data point in order to make an adjustment to make better progress the next time you attempt something. So the more red pen that you have on your paper, the more red pen that you can collect, the easier your revisions will be because you will know exactly where you need to focus and where you need to adjust. I would also encourage you to stay curious. When something isn't working, ask questions. Why isn't it working? What's another approach that you could try instead? What are you trying to accomplish with this skill? And is there another way that you can get there? Just like with lunging, for me, it was an opportunity to warm us both up and focus and connect together. Okay, is there another thing that we can do that would also accomplish that before we come back to this thing that isn't working? Can I incorporate positive reinforcement into this problem somehow? Can I turn this into a game? Horses have different learning styles just like people do. And so if something isn't working, can you stress test what exactly is not working by breaking the task down into smaller and smaller pieces? And if you can you notice which piece your horse or you get stuck on? Can you make a game or a challenge with yourself to think of maybe one or two new ways to teach that piece that's stuck that are maybe different from the current approach? Also, put a lot of effort into focusing on your progress instead of the end goal. So, did your horse get 1% better today? Did they get one step closer to mastering a new skill? If so, that's worth celebrating, just as much as mastering the skill as a whole is. This is one that I personally struggle with because I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. And I seem to have this gene where if I feel like I'm 80 or 90% there with something or finished with something, I can't just let it rest. I have to push it until it's complete before I can move on to the next thing. And so learning to celebrate small wins instead of just the big goal has been a challenge for me. So I am working on facilitating that within my own mindset, and hopefully in turn I'm able to model that behavior for true. Practice some self-compassion as you are developing your growth mindset. Just like your horse, you're learning too. So it's important to be kind to yourself when things don't go as planned or when you continue to have fixed thoughts pop up in your head. The learning about this is the victory, not the mastery. And shifting into a growth mindset lends itself really well to positive reinforcement training, because positive reinforcement training requires you to hunt down the good and reward them. So if you shift into a growth mindset, mistakes automatically become something that could be good because they become clues to help you move towards the good stuff. So either you're celebrating a win and mastery, or you're celebrating giving each other hints that help you get closer to mastery and make it easier to get it right together the next time. So in conclusion, this sounds a lot like one of my favorite swing dance songs. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. And so the way we think about our abilities and our horse's abilities, not just where we're at with our abilities, can have a profound impact on the larger trajectory of our lives, from academics to athletics to mental health and problem solving, and how you show up for your horse. By adopting a growth mindset, you can turn challenges into opportunities. You can foster a stronger bond with your horse. You can create a more rewarding experience for both you and your horse. And that is a skill that is truly healing. Thanks for joining me today on the Daily Ride podcast. If you're enjoying this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for us. If you'd like to support my nonprofit, True Heart Healing, head on over to www.the-daily-ride.com to make a donation to help us further our mission of helping veterans, service members, children with disabilities and/or life-altering illnesses, and their families have a safe and healing experience with horses to cultivate their own growth mindsets, foster stabilizing relationships, find hope, and discover purpose. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And until next time, enjoy the ride.